Hey, what up, everybody? So, anyone who's been subscribed to my channel for a while, you know that I kind of share my journey of life with you guys to some extent. Well, to a large extent, I guess. And, you know, as things happen in my life, it kind of prompts me to extrapolate on those topics. So, in this video, I'm going to talk about boundaries. For those who like to read, there is a book by the title of Boundaries by Townsend, and I forget the other guy's name, but it's two Christian authors. It's a Christian book written on boundaries. Really good foundational stuff. So you can check that out if you're into books. All right, now, along the complex journey that I've been on called my life, I have learned both like officially academically but also experientially, and it keeps being reinforced experientially, how important it is to, one, have healthy boundaries, which means you have to decide on them, you have to commit to them, and then you have to communicate them. And yeah, just the point, like the succinct point that I want to make is that I don't care what kind of relationship it is. It could be at work, it could be with a landlord, a roommate, it could be with someone you are interested in romantically. And this is all the more for for Christians, because as Christians we are supposed to be set apart, holy. We are supposed to be setting an example for the world. We are supposed to be godly. And although, yes, in this lifetime none of us will be perfect, godly means holy, as in HOLY, yes, set apart, but it also means WHOLE, whole, holy, okay, which means healthy, okay? Jesus was the healthiest man who ever walked this earth, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally. I bet you most people don't really even consider that. And if we are to be Christ-like, that's what it means to be a Christian. The root word of Christian is Christ. We are supposed to be shining God's light, leading by example as best we can. And yeah, we all are on our own journey, and we all have our junk, but we are supposed to be pursuing healing and deliverance and integration so that we can be healthier, become more whole, and therefore better set an example and lead by example for the world and for other Christians as well, coming up behind us, so to speak. Okay? I just went through something, a situation with a prospective landlord slash roommate. And as usual, at first it was going really great. I got really excited. I thought this was finally it. I even typed up a lease this time, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just going to share this example just to give, because, examples are good when you're teaching, and it just gives some insight. So this person and I had emailed, we had text messaged, we got on the phone, we talked on the phone. I felt very comfortable with this person. They are a Christian, although they're obviously not equally yoked. They're not as mature in their walk as me. And no, that's not me being full of myself. It's just, it is what it is. This person has not reached certain levels, certain realizations yet, and whatever. But, it was all going good. And then I was kind of clarifying a few details here and there via text message. And out of nowhere, I had asked this person about his dog, like, was there a lot of dog hair, like, particularly in the kitchen. I'm a cleanly person, and, I don't like to have dog hair in the kitchen. And, he went on to address that and, tell me that his dog doesn't really shed. And, that's fine, all good. All appropriate conversation for a prospective landlord tenant relationship. And then he sends me a text message and he says something to the effect of, um, he sends me this like paragraph about how excellent his oral hygiene is. You could say that's innocent and cute. You could also say that's creepy. And you could say it's both and. And because I'm intelligent and I have been through so much crap in my life, and I already kind of felt like the very subtle attraction from him to me. A woman knows when a man is attracted to her. I cut straight to the chase, through the chase, and I texted him back and I said, okay, well, now I have to, ask you, are you interested in me romantically? Because before I do anything, before I sign a lease, before I move in, I need to know what I'm getting into. And so, as much as it's taboo in our increasingly communist culture these days to be direct, being direct is actually a healthy thing. Jesus was very direct. If you actually analyze his communication, he was extremely direct. Just like when that man, who needed to be healed, sat there beating around the bush, giving him all those excuses, he cut right to the chase and said, do you want to be made well or not, dude? Let's cut the BS, right? That was Jesus's attitude. He was like, look, here it is. He was a very direct communicator. So I asked this person, are you romantically interested in me? And so, of course, he wrote back, and of course the response was yes. And that's when everything began going downhill. And what's funny is, everything was going great, and I began typing up the lease prior to this happening, and I forgot to pray the prayer of God, Holy Spirit, please reveal to me whatever I need to know about this man. Is there anything dangerous, untrustworthy, detrimental, harmful, And as soon as I did that, that's when this guy came out with this oral hygiene paragraph. Because you have to think about this, right? Why would a prospective landlord, roommate, boast and share about how good his oral hygiene is? Unless he's trying to say, like, hey, if you kiss me, it'll be great, right? I mean, you got to think about people's motives, okay? And so then this whole thing ensued for the last, 24 hours of, me trying to make it clear to him of, boundaries. And so not only did I have to make a proper boundary regarding tenant-landlord, but I also wanted to address this other area of romance and tell him, look, first of all, number one, I believe God has revealed and confirmed to me someone else as my future husband. Number two, even if we were to hypothetically scratch that and say that that's bogus, it would not be healthy for us to get involved if I'm renting from you. And there was other things involved. He tends to have a drink every now and then, and my personal preference, my personal boundary is, I don't drink, and I would prefer that my partner, my romantic partner, does not drink either. And from that point on, we just kept going in circles and circles and circles. And then we got on the phone this evening to try to, resolve things to see whether or not we could both move forward here. And this person then tells me that I reminded them of their controlling ex-wife. And I inquired, okay, well, can you explain how I reminded you of your controlling ex-wife? And more or less, all the questions that I had asked about his lifestyle and his dog and the house and how he runs his house and, just all those things about sharing a home with someone, living under the same roof, coexisting, that gave him he perceived me as controlling. And see, here's the distinction between people who have been healed of their brokenness and are quote unquote healthy and those who are not. They don't even have boundaries and distinctions within their own perception. So when I go to interview a prospective landlord, just like anything else, just like when a employer goes to interview a prospective employee, whatever, you want to make sure that you're on the same page. You want to ask direct questions. You want to find out whether or not your expectations match. Because if you commit to something and you enter into something which requires some kind of investment, usually of time and resources and whatever, and time is a resource, and then find out, oh, well, I expected this and you expected that. I defined this as that and you defined it differently. And, that is very aggravating. It's very demoralizing, and it can be quite wasteful of people's resources on both sides. And so the fact that I had asked him all of these questions, and yeah, most people don't like the fact that I ask all these questions. People just want to, jump into things just like people do with everything these days. Oh, let's just hop in bed and let's just do, and no, I'm not just going to hop in after all the stuff I've been through. Like, I'm asking questions. But just because I ask questions doesn't mean I'm accusing anybody of anything. And so that's the difference between healthy and unhealthy people. Is healthy people completely understand that you're asking a question to obtain more information so that you can make an informed decision. That's what a healthy conversation looks like. Is both people ask questions, both people state their boundaries, both people state their expectations, both people state their preferences, and that's how you discover whether or not it is a good fit, regardless of what kind of relationship it is, whether it's dating, whether it's a job, whether it's a living arrangement, whatever it is. That's what you do. You ask curious questions, you state your boundaries, you state your expectations, you state your preferences, and you find out whether or not you are a fit, whether or not you are both comfortable moving forward with each other. So the point that I want to make is that if you're not doing this already, start doing it. And if anybody comes at you and tells you not to do this, then that's a red flag, and that tells you that they are not a healthy human being. So what finally broke the camel's back here tonight for me was he sent me a text message, and quote unquote he said to me, "Stop nailing down boundaries." Quote unquote, that's what he texted me. And that was it. I was like, all right, that's it. Because, no, it is healthy. And again, I'm not just saying this from experience of my own opinion. This is stuff that I've learned in official classes on top of my experience. Okay, this is what they teach in classes. So I just want to make this point that, like, you need to comprehend that when someone asks you a question, don't take it personal. If you find yourself taking it personal, that's your junk. That's your brokenness. If someone asks you, like, hey, do you keep the house clean? Does your dog shed? Is there dog hair on the kitchen counter? If you're a healthy human being, you shouldn't take offense to that. You should understand that the other person is just inquiring for information to find out what kind of environment they would be living in if they rented a room off of you. So this comes down to what we talk a lot about in Christianity of, offense. Offense is a decision. If you're going to be offended, that's technically your decision. Every emotion that we have is technically a decision. Most people don't believe that because most people aren't taught that. Most people are taught, oh, you only experience your decision. No. What do you think it means in the Bible when it says to renew your mind, to take every thought captive? What do you think that means? It means it's a decision. It means that you're supposed to have the discipline and the strength through Christ, who strengthens me, right? I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. To rise above your emotions, okay? That's what it means when people say your inner man or whatever, your spirit man. Your emotions are in your soul. What we are exhorted to do in Scripture is to live from our spirit, not from our soul. Okay, our soul is basically our what the Bible calls flesh. Flesh is basically like your ego. It's your desires, your fears, all that stuff. That's in your soul. And our actual physical flesh, as Athena and her husband teach on the channel called The Bridge, that was kind of like an after. It was a result of the fall. It says God put skin on Adam and Eve. He put flesh on them. Okay, that's a whole nother thing. I'm not going to get into that again. But we are, as Christians, we're supposed to be living from our spirit, not our soul. If you get offended, it's because you've decided to get offended. And you need to work on that. You need to intentionally try to pay attention. You need to ask Holy Spirit to help you in the spur of the moment be self-aware of your knee-jerk reactions and catch yourself in the moment and say, wait a minute, I'm deciding right now to take offense. I'm deciding right now to react. I'm deciding right now to operate out of my soul instead of my spirit. And empathy goes a long way. That's why Jesus told us the golden rule to love each other as you love yourself, and you're supposed to love yourself. So again, with the situation of, you're looking to rent a room from someone or you're renting a room to someone, if they ask you, hey, do you keep, is there dog hair on the kitchen counter? If you have empathy, if you're loving that person as yourself, if you're putting yourself in that person's shoes, you can understand, you can comprehend that they're just trying to find out the level of cleanliness in the environment that they are potentially getting themselves into. It's nothing about you personally. It's just a matter of them asking about the environment because they are potentially going to move in and live there. It's nothing about the landlord. It's nothing about the other person. So me asking this guy a bunch of questions, he took it as like, oh, she wants to control me. No, I don't know you from Jack. I don't know you from Adam. It's not about me trying to control you. It's about me knowing where I'm comfortable, what my boundaries are in terms of cleanliness and whatever else. And I'm trying to figure out, are we a good fit before we do commit to each other and I move in. It's the same as any other interview process. So again, to circle back, making boundaries at the outset of any relationship is wisdom, okay? It is wise. It is imperative. Because it can save a lot of waste. Wasting getting your hopes up, wasting investing your time, your money, your resources, wasting your aggravation. Because I can tell you from experience that if you get yourself in the wrong situation, potentially that could drag out for a long time. And it could delay other blessings in your life. And then, that situation, that bad situation could then cause ripple effects. And I can tell you about some ripple effects. I have been there, done that. The black mold that I'm detoxing from right now, from 4 freaking years ago, that's a ripple effect I'm still dealing with because of decisions I made 4 years ago. Where one thing led to another, which led to another, which led to another, okay? You need to make your boundaries clear. You need to communicate your boundaries up front. But first, you got to figure out, what are your boundaries? You need to figure out what your deal breakers are. and what your deal breakers are for each type of relationship. So I was explaining to this man that as a tenant, if he has the occasional drink or whatever, as long as he's not getting drunk and he's not, overstepping my boundaries, as long as he's not violating me in any way, if he wants to have a drink on the weekend or whatever, that's fine. I told him I don't want to be around a drunk, but if he has a drink or two here and there, that's his business. As a tenant, that is my boundary. That, okay, I can tolerate you having a drink as a tenant. However, hypothetically, if him and I were ever to get involved romantically, I told him, romantically, my boundary is 0 tolerance for alcohol. Okay, so these are just examples. You need to figure out, what are your boundaries? What are your deal breakers for each type of relationship? Well, here's my boundaries as a romantic partner. Here's my boundaries as a tenant or a landlord. Here's my boundaries as an employee or an employer. Okay? Here's my boundaries as a friend, as a daughter, as a son, as a mother, as a father, whatever. What are your boundaries? What are your preferences? What are your expectations? What are your deal breakers? A deal breaker means it's non-negotiable. It means you will not budge on this issue. There's other issues that maybe, depending, you might compromise, you might bend, you might flex, but then there's certain issues, there's particular topics, areas that it's non-negotiable. You will not compromise. That is it. Figure out what that is. Sit down with a piece of paper or a Word document. Write it down, type it up, sort it out. What are your boundaries? What are your expectations? What are your preferences? Because you can't communicate that to someone else and have a fair communication with them if you don't know yourself. And this is what we are called to as Christians. We are called to be healthy, and we are called to know ourselves so that we can then have healthy interactions with other people. You need to know who you are. You can't know who you are if you don't know your motives, if you don't know your boundaries, your expectations, your preferences, your deal breakers. Who are you? Figure that out first before you try to move forward with anybody in any kind of relationship. Figure that out. I know I can tolerate my landlord or roommate having a little bit of alcohol here and there as a tenant and as a roommate. I know as a girlfriend, fiance, wife, I will not tolerate alcohol, period. That's an example of the same topic in a different type of relationship. Another example would be, I don't know, as a parent, you may have a teenage child, that whatever, you're not going to tolerate them, whatever it is. Whereas when you have a friend, you will, like, each type of relationship is different. And there's different boundaries for different relationships. So figure that out and then make that clear. It's very important to do it at the birth of a relationship, but if you're just trying to, improve your life and everything, even with the relationships that you already have, there's nothing wrong with sitting down with the other party and saying, hey, I've been really getting some clarity lately, and I figured out that this is where I stand. These are my boundaries. These are my expectations. These are my preferences. And moving forward, this is what I want and what I don't want and what I'm going to tolerate and what I'm not going to tolerate, yada, yada, yada. And you make that clear. There is nothing wrong with that. And even if you do that at the beginning of a relationship, or even if you do that right now with your established relationships, and sometime in the future, a year from now or whatever, you've grown, you've evolved, you've matured, God has shown you certain things, and you change your mind, which means you change your boundaries, you communicate that at that time. Hey, I know I said such and such, but now where I'm at, where God has brought me, Now I've decided that I'm changing this boundary, I'm changing this expectation, you know, and then you have a discussion with the other person. Okay, is that going to work for this relationship moving forward? Is that going to work for them? If not, it might be time to go your separate ways. But it's really wise and imperative to be doing this at the birth of a relationship, before you start getting involved romantically, before you sign a lease. Figure out what the boundaries are on both sides. And yeah, there's a difference between a boundary and a preference. There's a difference between, you know, there's slight nuances and distinctions between boundaries, expectations, and preferences. Boundaries more concrete, you know. A preference is more flexible. But that's where you have a conversation. That's where you know, try to give examples, you know. So anyway, I just wanted to address this because it needs to be addressed, and people just don't seem to. Most people just don't operate with healthy boundaries. Most people just kind of fumble into relationships, and then they want to know why everything blows up in their face, you know. So, and you know, a lot of people might argue and say, "Oh, well, April, you know, you're gonna find yourself with no options," or you know what. Bottom line, God is my provider, and he will bring me to whatever open door. And see, that's where someone who says that, it exposes their lack of faith. It exposes how they are grasping at control. I know what I want. I know what I need. I know what my boundaries are and expectations and preferences are in all types of relationships, regarding the workplace, regarding romance, regarding a living situation. I know where I'm at. And yeah, I am going to very quickly narrow down my options. Absolutely. That's what you want. That's what a healthy person wants, is they don't want to be wasting their time, their money, their aggravation, their hope, their resources on a situation that's not a good fit. Think about that. I had someone a few months ago, so I have a certain greeting on my voicemail regarding recruiters calling me. Now, that hasn't happened in a while. It's kind of died down, but going back over a year ago, I used to get called constantly by recruiters for jobs. And they want to, like, catch you off guard. They want to get you on the phone. They want to, like, you know, like, try to, because they all have a quota, you know. They have to have a certain amount of phone calls, a certain amount of emails, a certain amount of interviews, you know, whatever. And they're just wasting your time, because a lot of the time they'll call you and it's like, you don't even qualify for that job, like, and it's like, why are you wasting my time, you know. So I screen my calls, and I have a greeting on my voicemail that says, you know, please send the job description, the location, the salary, because a lot of these recruiters, especially in the last couple of years, they've gotten really lazy. They don't even have an official job description to tell you, okay, what would you be doing? If you want me to sit here and talk to you on the phone about a job, you better be able to tell me what I'm going to be doing for 40 hours a week. You better be able to give me bullet points of, well, here's the duties and responsibilities that you would be expected to do. Oh, well, we don't really have a job description. Well, then I bet, you know, you better go get one. You know? And I had someone a few months ago tell me, oh, well, April, you know, you're really narrowing down your chances for a job. I don't want, I mean, yes, I need an income and whatever, but like, these recruiters are not my God. Yahweh is my God. Yahweh is my provider. If it's meant to be, it'll be. When God wants me to have a job, he brings me a job. But why should I waste my time talking to these people about jobs when half the time I don't even qualify for the job? Like, I'll sit there on the phone with them. Oh, they want someone who has SQL experience. Like, I'm like, do you see that on my resume? Do you see that on my LinkedIn? Like, why are you calling me? I don't have that experience. boundaries. My boundary with job recruiters is don't even come at me. Don't even contact me unless you have your crap together first. You want to talk to me about a job, then give me a job description. And the other game that job recruiters like to play is the whole salary thing, because I've worked in enough jobs and I've worked in accounts payables departments where I see the invoice that the staffing company is sent. What is it? Or that they sent. I'm trying to think. Do they send it? Anyway, and like these recruiters, on the low end, they make at least like minimum wage above what they're paying you. At least like $8 or more an hour above you. And some of them make like $30 an hour on top of what you're getting paid. And so they'll try to lowball you. And I'm not interested in this whole, game where they want to lowball you. Oh, well, what were you expecting? Oh, what would you like to get paid? No. I know darn well that when a client goes to a staffing agency and says, hey, find us an employee, they have a certain budget. They have a certain amount of money that they're willing to pay the staffing agency per hour for that employee. And then the staffing agency gets a cut, the recruiter gets a cut, and then the employee gets the little small percentage. And I'm not interested in playing these games with these people. You want to come at me as a job recruiter? You give me the job description so I know what the hell I'd be doing for 40 hours a week, so I can figure out whether or not I'm even interested and whether or not I'm even a fit for this. Okay? So that is a form of a boundary. In a sense, of like, I'm not even willing to engage you and talk about a job if you can't even present to me what the expectations of that job are. How am I supposed to be able to sit here and talk to you about a job if you can't tell me what the expectations are coming from that client? What is it that they want someone to do for 40 hours? What are the expectations? See what I'm saying? Same thing with a living arrangement. Same thing with romance. We all have certain expectations, certain things that we assume and we take for granted. Some people assume that, drinking's normal, fornicating's normal, smoking pot's normal. Well, if you're a Christian who's living a set-apart life, no, that's not normal. And you probably don't want to be living under the same roof with someone who lives like that. So, I'm probably beating a dead horse at this point, but I just wanted to make this point. Boundaries, expectations, and preferences are very important. Figure out what yours are for each type of relationship, and then communicate that to your current relationships, and make sure you communicate that at the outset of any birthing of any new relationship. It'll save a lot of aggravation. All right. I bless you all in Jesus' name.